I was, well, you know. Hi, my name is Whitney and I love fat. It sounds like a Fat Lovers Anonymous meeting. Today, I'm gonna show you how to render fat. Praise the Lord! Hi, my name is Whitney, and I can show you how to have a heart attack before you're 40. Behind me here, I have several bags of pork fat. So this is not just the leaf fat that's in the organs, this is also the outside fat of the pig. Pork lard is like solid gold in this house. And I just so happen to have a little bit left of it in our freezer, and we need to be cleaning out our freezers because we have pigs and cows both going to the processor this week, and so we're needing to make some room. So I'm gonna show you what I do with the pork fat, how I render it, and then the things that I use it in. So let's get started. I am starting with 3 separate bags of frozen lard. I believe that this one is pork lard, and I'm not certain, but these may actually be beef tallow. I can't remember, and they're not labeled, but this might be the internal organ fat on our last steer that we had processed. But for my intents and purposes, I'm just going to mix them. What I use it for, you're not going to be able to tell a difference. So I'm gonna do this all together. Now, because these are frozen, I'm going to need to let them thaw a little bit to begin with. They're not gonna have to thaw all the way because I'm gonna be cutting them up, but just thaw just enough to where I can take a knife and cut them into pieces. So I'm gonna leave these out on the counter here. I'm gonna put a towel underneath them and just let them thaw on the counter at room temperature for a little while, just until it's soft enough that I can get a knife through it. While we're waiting for that lard to defrost and to thaw a little bit, I'm gonna show you what I have left. This is what I have left from the last time that I rendered lard. This is what we're gonna end up with, and it kind of looks like a mess, but we want as close to a snow white appearance to our lard as possible. We wanna get all of the impurities out of it to where it is nearly just solid snow white. This is beautiful. Now, I wanna show you what I use it for. One of the best ways that I like to use lard is in my homemade pie crust. Now right now, Joe and I are eating keto, so we're not having any carbs, but I have a friend that I'm trading an apple pie for some beehives. We really wanted to raise some bees and we didn't have any of the bee box hives, and so I'm gonna trade him a homemade apple pie for them. Now, I can't just make any pie for a deal like that. That's a pretty great deal. I'm gonna make him my homemade pie crust with homegrown pork lard. So I need about a cup in this recipe, and I've got a little bit over a cup left, thank goodness. So while I'm rendering the rest of this lard, I can be going ahead and using what I have left so it doesn't go to waste either. Okay, so I am gonna post this recipe down below in the description box with detailed instructions about how to make a pie crust. But I just want to share with you just some tips that I have for a perfect pie crust. The first tip you're gonna see right here is that I sift my flour and all the other dry ingredients together before I start to make the pie crust. I think it just turns out so much better if you will sift your flour before you mix in the fat. Here's another tip is nutmeg. Oh my goodness. I love just maybe like a quarter of a teaspoon of nutmeg in my pie crust if I'm making a sweet pie. Now if I'm doing something like pot pie, I don't add the nutmeg. But in a sweet pie, nutmeg just gives it something a little extra. And you can see here, one of my other secrets is that I don't use just one type of fat. So I like to add about 1/4 cup of butter just to give it a slight buttery flavor, but then I use 3/4 cup of the pork lard. So I want a full cup altogether of fat, but I like to kind of mix it. So if you're gonna use vegetable shortening, you can do part vegetable shortening and then part butter. So just play around with it and decide what you like the best. Another tip is to make sure that the butter and the fat that you use is cold. We're gonna want to be very careful to work this dough quickly and not too much so that the fat doesn't melt. Now, if your fat starts to melt a little bit or you've worked it a little bit too much, you can always put it in the refrigerator to cool it back down, but it'll be so much easier to work if the fat is not melted and it has stayed cold. So always, always, always start with cold fat. Another tip is this handy little tool called a pastry cutter. This is what I use to cut the fat into the flour mixture. It does a really good job. I can't imagine having to do this with a fork or something. If you do not have one of these and you want to make a pie, I really suggest having a pastry cutter on hand. It really makes this job so much easier. So this is the consistency we're going for with the pie crust when you get all the fat cut into it. Another secret to a perfect pie crust is our farm fresh eggs. Oh my goodness, look at how orange that yolk is. A farm fresh egg is gonna take any baked good to the next level. It just adds such a richness of flavor and it is amazing. Okay, and look at my cute little whisk. Isn't this adorable? Okay, so I kind of bought this whisk as a joke. I never really thought that I would use it, but the joke is on me because this is the handiest little thing. It works so much better than a fork for whisking just small amounts of things. Okay, next tip is white vinegar. Now I put vinegar into this mixture for a couple of reasons. Vinegar will help keep the dough from drying out, especially if you are going to refrigerate or freeze this dough for later. Make sure you put a little bit of vinegar in it. It won't make the pie crust taste different, but it will really help retain the moisture in the dough, especially if you are going to refrigerate or freeze it. So you can see here, I am not mixing this much. I just combine it and then I'm gonna work it. You do not want to overmix this, like I said before, because the fat will melt and it just won't turn out as well. And this is my pastry mat. I absolutely love it. Joe bought this for me from Bed Bath & Beyond, and I can put a link down below if I can find out where he found this pastry mat, but it is awesome. So make sure that your surface is well floured so it doesn't stick. Now this pastry mat does a really good job of not sticking, but it really helps if it is well floured as well. Okay, yeah, take your ring off. I've learned that the hard way. Oh, it's so annoying to pick dough out of your wedding ring. So I am not gonna overwork this dough. I'm gonna be very careful. I'm gonna knead it just for a couple of minutes here, very gently, so that the crust is a little bit more flaky, but don't overwork it. Another tip is this little booger here. I'm not really sure what you even call this, but I just use it to cut my dough and it works so well, so much better than a knife, and it also doesn't cut into my pastry mat. If you use a regular sharp knife, it could cut into your mat, and that is sad if you get a little hole in your pastry mat. Another tip is to always work diagonally with your crust, and you don't have to make it perfectly round, and I'll show you why in a minute. Try to get it as smooth and as level as you can, but you don't have to make it perfect. Here's my trick. I lay the pie pan on the dough that I have rolled out, and then I cut, leaving about 1/4 to 1/2 inch all the way around the pie plate. And then I'm gonna pull off the excess, and I'll show you my magic trick to make just the perfect inside crust. With this pastry mat, makes it so easy. Just gonna do a quick flip, and it turns out perfect every time. I just slowly push it down into the pan and make sure it's even and level, and then I can start on the top crust. Once again, we're not gonna get this perfect. I'm just gonna make sure that it is the desired thickness that I want, and I like my crust pretty thick. The crust is actually my favorite part of the pie, and so I like thick crust. And we're gonna do a lattice work top, so we really don't have to make sure that this top is perfect, because I'm gonna take my pizza cutter and I'm gonna cut it into strips, and they are not gonna fit perfectly on the pie anyway. When we do the lattice, I'm gonna be trimming the edges, and so, like I said, this is not gonna be perfect. You can see here the thickness that I get it. And this time I'm going lazy with the filling. A lot of times if apples are in season, I make my own homemade apple pie filling, but apples are not in season here, and so just a regular pie filling. But I don't just fill it with the filling. I kind of doctor it up a little bit. I like to add a little butter and some cinnamon and some sugar to the top of it. I find that the canned pie fillings are not all that sweet. They're a bit more tart, and so I like to kind of doctor them up a little bit of cinnamon, and I'll probably add a little bit of nutmeg. Knowing me, I like a little nutmeg in my apple filling as well. Okay, so this is just gonna be a quick showing of how to do a lattice top. It does not have to be perfect. I like to say that if it's not perfect, it's rustic. And so if your pie crust doesn't come out perfect, just call it rustic and it makes it cute, right? We're just gonna go back and forth and braid them through. Easy peasy, and leave them hanging over the edge, and then we can always just go back and trim them up. No biggie. And there we go. There is our lattice work top pie crust. So here is our finished product, and there's a couple of ways we can go about this. I like to put an egg wash on top of mine, and then I like to sprinkle with a little bit more sugar and cinnamon. I mean, why not? It's pie, right? Like, nobody expects to be eating health food. So that's probably what I'm gonna do to this one. Or you can just put a little butter on it and put it in the oven. You can put it in the oven just like it is. The top is totally up to you. Pie's done baking. I baked it at 350 for about half an hour or so. Depends on the doneness that you want. Now it really does make me sad to make a pie and not be able to have a single piece of it. But I hope you enjoy it, Greg. I honestly hope it makes it to you. My lard is thawed out to the point that I can cut it now. And so I'm gonna open this up and start cutting it in just small chunks. And then I'm gonna put it inside of my crock pot, turned on low. Now it's very important that you turn it on low because this is going to have to render down very slow at low heat or it will burn, and we don't want it to burn. In order to come out with white lard, we need to go low and slow. So make sure it is set to low. just a small disclaimer here. This stuff, as it cooks, smells like a men's locker room and sweaty gym socks. And your whole house is gonna stink. So if you can do this in the fall or the spring when you can open your windows, that's ideal. Now today is nearly 100 degrees outside, so we're not doing that, and we're just gonna deal with the smell. So, just fair warning, it stinks. Okay, so it has been about 6 hours, and you can see here that it is starting to render down, but it's still got quite a ways to go. I would say I probably have a few more hours of this until it's totally rendered down. Just kind of wanted to show you what it looks like when it starts to render. Now we're not after these chunks. These chunks are actually going to turn into what's called cracklins. I don't know if anybody else is familiar with cracklins, but you can make yourself pretty sick on those. It's kind of like having pork rinds. Anyway, so we're going to be getting rid of the hard pieces, and what we're wanting is all of this grease left in here, and we're going to be straining it and making it pure. So, got a few more hours left to go, and then I will come back and show you. Okay, so it has been about 8 hours since we started this on low, and it's been cooking. Now, it's not quite all the way done. If you want to eat cracklins, these aren't quite cracklins yet, but quite honestly, I should have started this earlier in the day, and it's late and I'm ready for bed. So I am okay with this. Now, like I said, you could probably render this a little bit longer and get even more, but I'm good with this. This is good enough for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scoop out all of these, I guess, cracklins that aren't quite done, and I'm just going to put them over here to the side. I'm going to get out just as much as I can, the big pieces. As you can see, the cheesecloth has caught most of those extra little remnants in the lard. And so I'm going to just take this off here, and this is what we're left with. Now it still looks a little bit yellow, but we're gonna let this sit overnight, and it's gonna cool slowly. And as it does, any impurities left in here are gonna either rise to the top or they're gonna fall to the bottom. And so it's gonna separate out the rest of the impurities in here. And at that point, we can decide whether we can just kind of scrape it and it looks good, or if we need to just heat it slowly one more time and then strain it one more time. But we'll find out in the morning how good of a job this did at filtering out everything. So we'll check back on this in the morning. All right, so it's the next morning, and I want to show you what we've got after it's sat overnight and cooled down slowly. So this looks so good. I'm so happy with this. Now I'm going to use a spoon and I'm going to scrape down, because if there were some impurities in here, they more than likely fell to the bottom. And so I'm going to transfer this into a separate bowl, but I'm going to be very careful not to just scrape all the way down to the bottom, just in case there's some little pieces of stuff down in the bottom there. But I'm going to go ahead and transfer this to a bowl. I'm happy with it. Now sometimes I have to do 2 strains on it, but this one just needed 1. So if yours turns out and it has a little bit of a yellow tint to it still, or if there's a whole lot of stuff still in it, then you can just heat this up slowly in a pot, or you can stick this in the microwave even just for maybe 20 seconds or so and just melt it. Just until it's melted. Don't leave it in there too long or it will burn it.
that you can just melt it a little bit and then get you some more cheesecloth and strain it one more time. And each time you strain it, it's just gonna get purer and purer white. But I am happy with this. This looks great. So I'm gonna go ahead and transfer this to a bowl.
Okay, so let's talk storage. Now, you can store lard in the refrigerator in a container for up to 3 months without it going bad or starting to smell funky. I like to store mine in the freezer to start with. Now, if you put your lard into a package like this, just to solidify it in the fridge for a little while and then take it out, and you can actually cut it into chunks and then wrap it in plastic wrap and put it in your freezer, and it can last for up to 3 years. And so that's typically what I like to do, is keep most of it in the freezer and then just have a little bit that I am actively using in the refrigerator. It's very simple just to take it out of the freezer, put it in the fridge. So my absolute favorite ways to use lard are pie crust, and this pie is all ready to go to our friends today to trade for a bee box, and I'm really excited about that. Another way that I really like to use lard is in homemade flour tortillas. They are so good with homemade lard in them. Another way you can use lard is frying. Fried potatoes in lard, super good, just the way my grandma would make them. And another really fun way of using lard is to make homemade lard and lye soap. And that is a video that I'm really excited to make in the future to show you how we make our own soap. And I like to make soap closer to Christmas time because I just love to give it as Christmas gifts. Super fun. Now, you can find so many more ideas online, and you may have ideas of your own about how you can use lard. I've had so much fun hanging out with you guys today and just showing you how we like to use every part of what we grow out here. It's so important to us not to waste. We work so hard and we spend so much time raising things out here that we really do try to just get as much out of it as we can. With that, I say thank you so much for watching. We hope that you enjoyed this video, and we hope you stick around for more content from us. If you could like this video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss anything, we would really appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye, guys.